Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, it is just me, no Benjamin B today. First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one it is that you use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. YouTube is something that we've taken seriously over the past, I'd say year and a half, and it's something that we enjoy. So, in the event that you see something that you really think would resonate with somebody, feel free to share it with them. And in the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns about your specific situation, you can always reach out to us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com, and we will get back to you momentarily, hopefully momentarily. May take a day or two, but rest assured we will get back to you. And if we don't, for whatever reason, because you keep in mind, we have a full-fledged operation that we're also in charge of and help operate the day-to-day stuff, just reply, send us another email, because at least I'll speak for myself. Sometimes they get lost in my emails. I probably get 50 to 100 emails a day. And so they can get lost in the shuffle. So anyways, in today's episode, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that I know I've recorded this stuff in the past, but I do like to bring this up periodically because, like I've said before, I can't expect people to listen to every single episode that we've ever recorded. There's over 270 episodes. Now, a lot of things that Ben and I record, there are specific themes to them, and we cover a lot of the same topics in numerous episodes, but it is important that we discuss things over and over because we're getting new listeners and we want people to constantly get the same message because we feel so strong about the message that we're at least trying to send that, sometimes we need to bring things up again. So today what I wanted to discuss is the two things that I have seen and I know Ben has seen in terms of relapses. When people generally relapse, there's two things that 9 times out of 10 don't cause the relapse, but it definitely plays a part. And those two things are going to be money and relationships. And I'm going to get into some details on both of those, but those are the two. So I'll just start talking about the first one, the money aspect of it. When we get clean and sober, and I reference this a lot, when we get clean and sober, we generally are eager to get our life back on track in every sense of the word, in all capacities. We want to get our life back on track, and one of the things that we have to do is make money. That's an obvious. We need to make money in order to get our life back on track. Some people, can care less about money, but the vast majority of people need to start making money. So where I see this take people is in a bunch of different directions, but when somebody makes money the priority, it can tend to derail you. And when I say make money the priority, I'm more specifically talking to people that are in early sobriety, and early sobriety can mean whatever it needs to mean for you. There is no written rule on what early sobriety is. I know people that have multiple years of sobriety that I would still say are in early sobriety just because they haven't matured. They haven't gotten to the place of, what sobriety has to offer somebody. So when it comes to prioritizing money and it becoming the focal point of your whole entire being, that is where it can derail you from your recovery and ultimately, your sobriety, and you will pick up. And some examples of this would be when somebody enters into let's just say the treatment process, or not even just the treatment process, but sobriety in general, recovery in general, whether it be a treatment center or they stumble into an AA meeting or church or whatever the case is, it doesn't matter. They have made the conscious decision to stop drinking and using drugs. That has to be priority. First and foremost, number one, that needs to be your priority. And generally speaking, it is somebody's priority in the beginning. But what can happen is as we put together, some days or weeks or months or even years of sobriety, we tend to switch things a little bit and put the recovery and the sobriety more on the back burner. And we start to see all the parts in our life that could use tending to. And most people don't have enough money. Most people want to make more money. If I just could make X amount of dollars, things would be so much better. If I could get that job, things would be so much better. And we're constantly chasing that. And I am an example of this myself. I remember when I was making a certain dollar amount and I said, okay, well, I'll just use this example. I was making, when I first got involved in treatment, I was making, I don't even know, $25,000, maybe $30,000 a year. And I said, man, when I can make $40,000 a year, things will be so much better. And then when I can make $50,000 a year, things will be so much better. And constantly chasing more money. And that's okay. It's okay to want to make more money. I think it's very important. I think people are allowed to make as much money as you want. That's the beautiful thing about living here in America. You can make as much money as you want to. But when it becomes something that is all-consuming and it's all you think about and it causes you to compromise on your ethics and your morals and your recovery foundation, and it causes you to do things that you otherwise wouldn't do, that is when it becomes a real issue. So when people enter into the recovery process in the beginning, recovery needs to be priority. And again, there's no timeline on this. You need to be able to prioritize your recovery and understand I am not going to do anything that is going to compromise my sobriety. So if taking this job that I know is going to pay me good money, but I'm going to have to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and in turn, I'm going to miss, X amount of meetings. I'm going to have to get up at 3:00 in the morning to be able to be at work by 4. And, I'm not going to be able to meet with maybe my sponsor as much, or I'm going to really have to let go of, if maybe you have sponsees and I'm going to have to let some of them go. When you start to do those things, it now is prioritizing money. Again, though, I do think that this is all about balance, and I'm specifically talking to people that are in early sobriety that are really trying to find their way. I see this so many times, especially in the treatment process. When somebody comes into treatment, they're gung-ho. They're on fire for sobriety. They're willing to do whatever it takes. And a month or two goes by and they're like, okay, this feels good. I'm doing okay. I don't feel like I'm at risk for relapse. I got a sponsor. I'm working steps. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. It's about time that I start looking for this career. And the reason that I say career is because a lot of times people they go from one extreme to the other. You say, okay, well, I'm going to go from being unemployed and being in treatment to looking for this career that's going to require me to work 45, 50, 60 hours a week. And in turn, I have to compromise on all of these things that have proven over the past couple of months to be working pretty well. And they end up doing that. And then all of a sudden, there's like no balance. They're working a lot. They're, required to put in a ton of hours. They find out they have a boss that they don't like. They have colleagues that they don't really care for. And it becomes more stress induced than anything. And lo and behold, I see people pick up over that because it's too much. And that's just the harsh reality of it. I mean, it's one of those things when people prioritize money over their recovery, it becomes an issue. And I believe this to be true throughout your whole recovery journey. And specifically in terms of high risk to relapse, people in early recovery, they're at very high risk of relapse if they prioritize money over their recovery. Now, the longer that you're sober and the more of a solid foundation that you have, you can start chasing money more, of course. Because in the beginning, maybe you're going to 7 meetings a week and you're meeting with your sponsor once or twice a week, and maybe you're in a treatment program and there's some sort of clinical requirement. Those things need to be priority, of course. But the longer that you stay sober, those things become less of a priority because you're not in such an acute state of addiction. If you have a couple months of sobriety, of course those things are required of you. At least they should be. And once you get a year of sobriety, a year and a half, 2 years, that's supposed to switch. That's supposed to change. Okay. I'm no longer in a treatment program. I'm no longer living in sober living. I'm no longer going to a meeting a day or 2 meetings a day. I'm no longer having to meet with my sponsor once a week, whatever those things are, because again, we're humans. We're supposed to get to this level of balance. And I think that's very important. And so as you are sober longer, you could pull back on some of those things, whether it be treatment and meetings and sponsorship and so on and so forth. And you can add in more, career choice stuff. Maybe you want to make a move across the country and you have a job opportunity that's 1,500 miles away. You're in a much different spot. You're in a much clearer head. You have a much more solid foundation of recovery, and it's a lot more comfortable to make that decision because you've built a solid foundation. And that's where I see a lot of people go astray is they prioritize these things and they want these things right out the gate. And it's really unfortunate because it can cause relapse rather quickly and rather easily. Now, the second thing, and this is, a lot of this is the same. It's relationships. You can take all the same things that I just said about money, and you can just take out the word money and put in relationships, because most people compromise on whatever they need to be doing in order to stay sober for a relationship. Because when we get sober, and I tell this to our clients all the time, I've said this on the podcast numerous times, the 2 things that make us feel the best in early recovery is money and relationships. So you may have the money aspect under control. You understand, listen, I'm going to go get a job. I'm not going to get a career. I'm going to work 15, 20, 25 hours a week. I'm going to learn how to manage that well. And once I can manage that well and build more of a solid foundation of recovery, I'll make some more money. You might have that part intact, but you find that you are chasing a relationship with somebody, and that has become a priority. And so all of a sudden, you're compromising on your meetings. You're compromising on meeting with your sponsor. You're compromising on your treatment program if you're in one. You're compromising on a lot of things. Any commitments that you may have taken on in your sobriety, you compromise on these things because you met somebody that, tugged at your heartstrings a little bit and gave you that little feel good rush. And now you're chasing that. And I see this. I don't know if one is more than the other. They're both, I would say, pretty close to equal. There's a saying, there's a slip under every skirt. And it is, I don't know. It's kind of it makes sense. I have a lot of young men that come into our treatment program, and women, but primarily men. And I notice that if they're not chasing money, they're chasing girls, or they're chasing both. And it's really a sad thing, because I know from my perspective, what they need to be chasing is recovery and chasing a strong sense of community and a strong, sober network. And they need to be chasing an understanding of spirituality and chasing how to better regulate their emotions and chasing all these things that make us better people. Rather than chasing those things, they're chasing money and relationships. And the same goes for girls as well. I just happen to work with more men than I do women, and that's the reality of it. So, an example of this would be a young 25-year-old man goes into a meeting, and he met a girl there, and they both have 3 months of sobriety. And next thing you know, they're sitting next to each other at the meeting. Next thing you know, they're going out after the meeting. Next thing you know, they're getting an apartment together. And next thing you know, they are meant for one another. And I'm telling you, it is extremely difficult to talk sense into these people. When you have two people that buy into the idea that they are meant for one another, that this is God. God put this person in my life. That is hard to break from, because we know, as people that are, have multiple years of sobriety under our belts, and we've seen this play out thousands of times with other people, we don't know. We don't know what we're talking about. This person was put in my life by God. This is a God thing. I know it is. It's really hard to talk these people out of, or making them see, okay, maybe this isn't what's best for me. And ultimately, they get the apartment together, and they quickly find out after a period of time that they don't like each other, or one person's recovery is a lot stronger than the other person's, or she finds out that the dude just, is kind of a deadbeat and doesn't really want to do much of anything and is more concerned with playing video games and then going out and making money and being productive. Or, he finds out that she is, the same person, and it just gets extremely ugly. And keep in mind, when these people fall into this trap, they generally don't have much sobriety time put together. There's kind of an unwritten rule, and I don't even like referencing this, but I will. Wait at least a year. Get a year of sobriety before you venture off and get into any sort of relationship. And I agree with that to a certain extent, but, I think more important, it is specific to the person. It is specific to, a lot of it hinges on how much work you've put towards your recovery, how much work you've done on yourself. If you have daddy issues, or if you have mommy issues, have you worked through those? If you have trauma, have you worked through that stuff? If you're emotionally a wreck, have you gotten to a healthy place? Because rest assured, the stuff that you haven't worked on, and these wounds that are open in your life, you get into a relationship, you're taking that with you. It just doesn't go away. And a lot of times people will use relationships as a coping skill. So you have all these open wounds, you have all this trauma, you have all this emotional dysregularity, if that's even a word, going on. And you think to yourself, oh, this person makes me feel good. And it makes you forget about all this other crap that you have lying underneath the surface. And you get into this relationship and that all spills over and it becomes an absolute mess. And then, God forbid, but what I've seen happen multiple times is somebody, gets into a relationship and next thing you know, they're bringing a child into the world. And, now they have a baby coming and they have 4 months of sobriety and now they can't even manage their own life. And now they're expected to be able to manage a child's life. And it's really sad. It's unfortunate. I've seen it go both ways. A lot of times when they do end up getting pregnant and, finding out that they're bringing a child into this world, it lights a fire under them. And it makes them make a drastic change. And I have seen a lot of good come from that, but I've also seen a lot of bad. And a child gets brought into the world with parents that still can't string together any sobriety time. Their parents end up watching the kid or the grandparents end up watching the kid. And they just keep bouncing in and out of treatment centers and so on and so forth. So that is what I wanted to discuss today. And I know I've brought this up numerous times in the past, but again, I think it's important to constantly bring this up every so often. That way you have a fresh perspective on it. Money and relationships. If you yourself or somebody, a loved one that is prioritizing those things over their sobriety, it's generally speaking doesn't turn out well. So I hope that helps. And again, if you enjoyed this, if this is something that resonated with you or somebody else, please feel free to share it with them. And in the end, if you want to reach out to either myself or Ben, you can reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.